Good morning, everyone, and welcome to those of you who are here for our first Success in Family Firms workshop. And to those of you who are joining us for the first time this morning, thank you for coming. I'm sure you're going to have a great experience, and we look forward to seeing you at our final workshop, which is on November the 9th. My name is Patty Diggin, and I'm the director of the Cottrell Entrepreneurship Center at Westchester University. And on behalf of the center and Westchester, I welcome you all here this morning. Mike McGrann is here with us today from the Telos Group. He's going to be taking us through this workshop. If you did not have an opportunity to join us for the first workshop, I did send around a link to the video recording of that session, and there will be a recording of this session today as well as our third session. So any of you who are here today will, of course, have access to all those, and actually they're on our YouTube channel as well, so you can access them and share that information with others in this space who you might find the content to be valuable and interesting. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Mike, and he'll take us away with the program. Thank you. Oh, Mike doesn't need that. Right?
Yeah, I don't need that. Thank you. Thanks. Nobody can hear me.
This is for a recording purpose.
Last time we were together, we talked about the fact that family businesses are absolutely amazing and wonderful. At the same time, they're painful and can be avenues of destruction, just like our own families can. And there's no perfect family. There's no perfect family business. And when you take family and sprinkle in money and roles and responsibilities, it creates an opportunity for some real challenges. And at the same time, we said that when managed well, family firms are more competitive than non-family firms. And so the challenge for us is to figure out what is it about our family and our firm when mixed together that allows us to compete uniquely? What creates some unique competitive advantages? And where does our family create constraints? So we have a family, we have a business. The fact that our family and business are mixed, it creates advantages, it creates constraints. Our challenge is to figure out, be honest, brutally honest about where is it an advantage and where it's a constraint. One of the places that it creates a constraint is when it comes to managing conflict. So this morning, I want to just do share a couple frameworks for how we manage conflict in families, family firms. Then we want to talk about a bit about succession and next generation empowerment. So that's the focus today. One of the things about conflict is that we are not, as human beings, taught, or we're not born with the ability to deal with conflict. It's not something that God has given us. We inherit that, we learn how to deal with it from watching our parents, right? And so how many of our parents did you witness, how many times did you witness your mom or dad say to your mom or dad, say, hey, how are you doing? I understand you're really frustrated and angry at me, but let's talk this through. Like, did you hear your parents say that to each other? No. Right, exactly. Nor did I, right? Nor did I. And yet, our ability as leaders in family firms, as spouses, as parents, as cousins, as brothers, sisters, whatever we are in a relationship, is our ability to manage conflict, which is a reality in our lives, is a critical part to whether we are successful in family firms or not. And in my experience, when family firms fail, some of the times it's because Walmart came to town, or the China price, like there's some new competitor from overseas. But most of the time, it's because we're really struggling to talk through and be honest with each other about providing feedback, creating real accountability, and having open and honest discussions. If you think about it, real power comes from where? And what I can tell you, it's not from the ability to hire or fire or tell my kid you're fired. Real power comes from a different place. And if you think about those of you who have children, I have two boys who are 20 and 22. My ability to get them to do what I want them to do is based on what? Fear that if they don't do it, I'm gonna put them in their room, and I'm gonna carry their little butts up the stairs and throw them in the room and lock it.
Can't do that anymore. Education.
When they were 2, I could do that. But if I try it now, they'll throw me down the stairs, right? Because they're both bigger and stronger than I am. But you're exactly right. It's about my ability to communicate, to be in relationship. My power with them is based entirely on my ability to influence. Ability to influence, and in that ability to influence is based on trust and relationship. So what I would argue is that leadership, and whether we're talking about leadership in the form of leading non-family members in our business or leadership in our families, and our ability to influence other, real power comes from being in relationship. And what are the ways, and acknowledging that in any substantive interaction we have with those around us that we love or that we work with, we are either building trust or destroying it, creating closeness or distance. As men, we use anger to do what? To control. Does it create closeness or distance?
Distance.
It creates distance. And the interesting thing about, now it's not just men, women do it too, but typically the typical deal is men, we use anger to create distance, and we want distance. We don't know it, but we want that, because if there's distance, and I'm having a fight with Maureen. Melissa? Melissa, yeah, you guys know I'm so bad with names. Sorry, I asked you that 10 times last. If I'm having a fight with Melissa and she's giving me feedback about something I did to hurt her, or wasn't, I missed a boat on this presentation or with that customer or something, and I get angry and start yelling at her about, I've been doing marketing, I've been doing customer service for 50, you were in diapers and I forgot more, and I'm yelling at her. I'm getting angry. To your point, I'm creating distance. And the good thing for me is I'm not doing what? What am I avoiding?
Owning it.
Pardon?
Owning it.
Yeah, I'm avoiding the real issue. If I get angry and start yelling at her, she's tried to give me feedback. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that she's giving me feedback. I get angry. I start to yell at her. I create distance. The beauty of that for me is I don't have to have the real conversation. I don't actually have to look in the mirror. And so my point is, anger is a cover for some other thing, some other sense of vulnerability or something. And I mention that up front is because most of us suffer from anger. Some families I work with, however, and this is interesting, I see it in central Pennsylvania. I do a lot of work with families in central Pennsylvania. And you don't see anger there. What do you see? They're not yelling at each other. What are they doing? Not talking. That's exactly right. They're not talking. And so I can be angry at Melissa and scream and shout and create distance and avoid the conversation. Or, as I see with many people, it's cultural. In central PA, Amish Mennonite communities, I'm not about to get angry at someone. I'm not going to do that. But I'm just going to I'm not going to talk. I'm going to check out. Therefore, one of the skills that we talk about is, can we learn to come to the line? Can we learn to come to the line? And what I mean by coming to the line is being assertive, honest and assertive, not aggressive. When I'm aggressive and I'm yelling at Melissa, I'm crossing the line into her psychological space. Now, when I yell at Melissa, I cross the line into her space. I can do it with tone of voice. I can do it with body language. I can do it with physical proximity, which is really ugly, right? But when I cross the line into her psychological space, Melissa, what do you do? If someone's yelling at you, especially a loved one, what do you do?
Rather yell back or you shut down.
What do you do?
Probably yell back.
Is that true, Dad?
Definitely. Promise she's usually right.
So Melissa goes back, crosses the line, is yelling back at me. And again, if I'm Dad, The beauty of that, I'm not actually facing the real feedback, the real issue. I missed the boat on the presentation, or I hurt an employee because I didn't ABC, or I hurt her because I didn't DEF. As I mentioned, in many families, someone crosses the line and we run for the hills. As I shared with you yet last time, my mom was an alcoholic, and so when there was conflict in our family as a kid, there was conflict. It was very painful. So in my adult life right now, with those I love, when there's conflict, I want to bail out. I'm putting in reverse and I'm out the door. I don't want to, because it reminds me of really painful stuff from the past. We all have that. Here's the challenge though. Can we learn to communicate at the line, to be assertive, not aggressive? Aggressive is crossing the line into someone's psychological space. The other thing is, also though, not be passive, which is to walk away, or passive aggressive. Do you know what I mean by passive aggressive? It's like the dog who's licking your leg while he's pissing on your foot, right? Yeah, Patricia, I'll make sure I'm going to get that to you. No sweat. Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to, and it'll be there Monday. And I deliver it when? Friday. Or don't do it at all. Oh, don't worry. I promise I'll get it done, Mom. Yeah. Well, it'll be it. And I have no intention of doing it because all I want to do is get her done. So get her away. The trick is, where's the line? And the line for Melissa might be different than you, and we're all different. So we have to be in relationship to figure out where that line is. But what I can promise you, is that while we all do this from time to time, or we do that, but when we are, I'm using anger, when we are yelling and screaming, the point is anybody hearing? Some of you may have heard me use this term, but my dog Blue is the best dog on the whole planet. But if I say to Blue, get over here, Bluey, I want to give you a steak. What does Blue do? And if I say, come here, Bluey, I want to smack you in the face with a paper, what's Blue doing? Blue is coming over and is wagging his tail. Why? Because Blue, while we think we're further developed than Blue, the reality is we are not. And our people that love us, that we love, our children, our employees, have antennas up just like Blue. And they're coding, and they're watching their antennas, their radar. Are you safe? Are you crossing the line? And if you are, I'm going to respond a certain way. So again, the point is, can we be assertive, not aggressive? This has nothing to do with avoiding difficult conversations. Nothing to do with that. I have real concerns. If I need to talk to Torn about an issue, I'm going to walk towards it, say, hey, we got an issue. You were late for this, and I'm deeply concerned. Are you committed? There's nothing wussy about this. It requires discipline, though. The second skill that I'll mention is, can we work to keep it above the line? Which is to say, to not take it personally. When I come to Torn with feedback, and I say, I think you missed the boat on the presentation, I think we need to improve the next time we're sitting in front of a customer. If he hears it above the line, meaning he doesn't take it personally, he hears it at face value. What am I saying to him, to Torn?
Well, you're sharing your wisdom of the ages.
I care. What am I saying? Thank you. I'll repeat it. You got it.
Sharing your wisdom of the ages.
I care for Torn. I've done this a couple times. I've seen a few presentations. I care for him. I care for the company. I've got some wisdom I'd like to share with you. It's an act of love and care and concern. And his challenge, this is why I'm doing it, his challenge him to hear is at face value. I think now if Torn chooses to go below the line, to take it personally, to hear it through his luggage sack of pain from the past, what are we actually saying to Torn? He is what? He's a failure. He's worthless. And all that stuff. It's like my wife asked me to pick up the shoes If I hear it through face value, she doesn't want, well, let me back up. She asked me to pick up the shoes. If I hear it below the line, why is she telling me to pick up my shoes? Well, you know it. What's your name?
DJ.
DJ. DJ, you know. Why is she? I'm a slob. I'm a slob.
Actually, that's reversed, but that's okay.
That's why I should have left.
Let's get a little family dynamics going. But
The good thing is that we already have the relationship where we can talk about that and not be
bingo.
to that place.
But since I'm having a bad day, is it Lisa?
Yes.
Lisa. Lisa says, "Hey, can you pick up your shoes, Mike?" And I hear her. I go below the line. I hear her. She's telling me I'm a slob. I'm inconsiderate. I'm messy. I'm lazy. I travel too much. I don't care about her, the kids, et cetera, et cetera. And she's criticizing my mom because she knew my mom used to pick up after me. So this is going. I take a 2-second conversation and I turn it into 2 minutes, 2 years, and it just goes on and on. And we're spent.
But it's so true. I'm going to tell you, as a business, I was there because I had unresolved conflict, going back to what you said of how my parents resolved conflict. And so I brought it into the business, the family dynamic. And so we were there for a while, which caused our business to be on a treadmill.
Right. Right. So, yeah. Gary?
Mike, how do you, one of the challenges in succession planning, my partner and I built the business. Our children are running it now, and we built it from nothing, very successful, and we're watching. We don't like stuff that we see. We're like, we learn that doesn't work, and yet they don't ask us for any advice. My partner and I have 80 years of experience at this, good experience because we started with zero and learned everything the hard way, and yet they don't use us at all. And we look at it as just, as businessmen and think if we had two gentlemen who were willing to give up all their time to help us, we would have been with them every week asking them questions and getting their advice.
Yeah, yeah.
So as a parent, it's a big challenge because, and we've also found that, when I talk to his sons, they hear me. When he talks to them, they hear this other stuff. They're below the line.
Yeah.
This goes back to when they were 10 years old. And they were,
exactly.
I know. I can tell by my son's face. It's the same thing. Like he doesn't. I think he goes to. Because I'm saying something, and it's probably my tone of voice. My wife told me my tone of voice is horrible. Come over here, I want to give you a steak. So they don't hear a word I'm saying.
Screaming at the kid to listen, right?
The communication between a parent and a child in business. How do you try and communicate, but not, ever go below the line and yet be able to contribute to what they're doing so that you can help them?
Two specific thoughts. One is to help me, if I'm your son and you're going to give me feedback about how I missed it, you can help me, one, by tone of voice, right? If you're barking at me, if you're screaming at me, I'm not going to hear it. That's on you. But the other thing I think we can do with anyone in our lives that we want to have a tough conversation with is first, frame it. Put a little framer on it. Gary, look, I need to sit down and talk. I want to talk with you. I want to talk to you about what happened yesterday in the presentation. I have some concerns. I want to talk it through with you. I want your thoughts, but I've got some concerns I want to talk through with you. And I don't want you to hear this as a criticism of you, just how do we improve? So literally, I'm giving you the opportunity to understand that I'm framing the conversation. I'm not catching you off guard. I'm literally implicitly asking you not to take this personally, because this isn't about you personally, Gary. It's just about how we might do a better job. Is that going to work all the time? No, but it gives us a shot of by framing a conversation, giving me a place, a way to understand it. That's one thing we can do. And I think if we do it with love in our hearts, from a place of, I really think you can improve. That gives us a shot. The other thing I'll mention is about this, the wisdom of senior generation folks. And we'll talk about it a little bit later today, but this idea of we don't want senior generation folks to be put out to pasture. Like we talked about last time, succession can be scary because it feels like either death, I'm dropping dead, or I'm being put out to pasture. We talk about the idea of transitioning up, not out. So we want to see senior generation folks, you got to turn over the reins and let the next gen try to run, and they're going to skin their knees. They're going to fall off the bike. Now, if they're driving the business off the cliff, we got to stop them. But we do need a structure such that folks like a Gary can have, whether it's weekly, every 2 weeks, once a month, I don't know what it is, but some kind of regular meeting cadence so that wisdom that we've gathered, the tacit knowledge, all this stuff, you've seen 50 million situations, can be talked about. The trick for someone like Gary is, if I'm Gary's son, not to tell me what color toilet paper to be buying. Don't tell me who to hire and fire. I got to take that call. But bigger picture strategy issues like, everybody's business is different, but bigger picture stuff, how do we tackle this big problem or that supplier or, whatever, Walmart, whoever it is, like that's stuff we ought to be having conversation about. At the end of the day, though, whose call is it? That's the trick. Whose call is it? And if you're my dad, am I hearing this as advice from you? Give this some thought? Or am I hearing it from you as the owner of the business telling me I got to do that? Whose call is it? And that's another frame that is really important. If I'm a successor generation, I need to know, is this advice and a dialogue, or is this a direction? You got to do it.
So I got something for you, right? So one of the things that I talk about often when I'm in coach mode are the 3 C's, okay? Communication, consistency, and commitment. So if you commit to consistent communication, that's a recipe for success.
What was the third one?
Communication,
consistency, and commitment.
So if you commit to consistent communication, then you're setting up just what he's talking about in terms of framing up the dialogue, because your ideas should come from a place. Yes, you guys got the great experience, you got the knowledge, you've been there, you've built that, but at the same time, translating that into a conversation where it becomes beneficial, mutually beneficial, is often a challenge. But if you use up that framework, the 3 C's, then you'll find that it's easier to be able to do it, because you don't do it with the. Here's one of the things that we miss a lot is expectation, right? We have an expectation that when we speak, people are going to listen. We got that whole E.F. Hutton thing going on, right? E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. And when people don't listen, or when we think that they're not listening. Here's a quick example, because I got to turn this back over. But guy that I've been working for the last 13 years, right? He's a friend of mine. He owns a limo company. I drive for him part-time. There are things that I've been talking about for 13 years, right? And often it appeared along the way that there's no listening happening, right? Because here's what happens, the difference between hearing and listening. You hear, that's your audible senses picking up what's being said. Listening denotes an action that follows that up, right? So I'm in the same place, I'm sowing the same seed. So now in this season that we're in right now, I'm starting to see the results of that seed, those seeds being planted, and I'm seeing those actions, those things come to fruition. So when I thought that he wasn't listening, but I was still consistent about the way that I was bringing it, and keep in mind it was about great communication and not just it wasn't that let me beat you with this steak thing. That's where we get the results, because now he's doing the things I've been talking about for 13 years.
Part of the trick, though, is it not? So the 3 C's, and when you do that, you build trust. Mm-hmm. That if I'm sitting down and talking with DJ, I trust where he's coming from, and it's consistent, and he's communicating not with a hammer in his hand, but we're building trust. The other trick is, as you're saying, you've been doing this for 13 years with a friend of yours. Can I not get hooked on whether my son, my friend, does it or not? And if I'm your friend, if I'm DJ's buddy, and he gets pissed that I haven't taken his advice in year 2, we're done. Like, there's no way I'm listening to him because he's getting pissed. The challenge, if I'm going to give, can I let go of the need that this person's going to take my advice? Unless I'm the owner of the company. Now, if Dad's sitting there and he's the owner of the company, and I'm doing something he doesn't like, I gotta respect that. It's his call. But if I'm DJ giving my buddy advice, whether he takes it or not is his call. Whether my kids take my advice is their call. One final challenge. So we talked about personalizing the idea, I just want, real quick, this idea of a personal balance sheet. And it's really the key, I think, to being able to give and receive feedback with love and concern. Can we, and in theory, let me back up. In theory, this is really simple. Really simple. Can we be honest when we look in the mirror about what are our assets and what are our liabilities? And if we sat here and talked to our friends and neighbors around there, we could all list assets and liabilities. But the real work is when someone that we love or someone close to us gives us feedback. Now, in my case, you can clearly tell then when it comes to discussions like this, I'm always well prepared. I'm really interesting. I like all of my material is thoroughly based, is on theory and stuff, and I am God's gift to discussions about family business and family enterprising. And if Torrin comes up to me afterwards or raises his hand and said, I don't understand something, hinting at the fact that I might have a liability that I wasn't clear, what do? I don't have any liabilities. I'm God's gift. He hints that he doesn't understand something, meaning I might not have been clear. Since I don't have any liabilities, what do? I'm at fault. Absolutely. Quit snoozing. You're on your phone, you're sleeping, you're on your phone, you're up late, you didn't study, you didn't do the materials, et cetera, et cetera. I attack. Because I don't like the fact that he's hinted that I might have a liability. And I reject it. Similarly, I am God's gift to fatherdom, husbandom. I'm loving, caring, et cetera, et cetera. I tell this story all the time. I was coaching my kids, and this is when Lucas was a second grader. He's dribbling, was playing soccer, dribbling down the field, and was about to shoot and score, had an open goal, didn't do it, and I'm jumping up and down the sideline, screaming at him, "Shoot, Lucas, shoot!" Jumping up and down. After the game, Lucas says, "Dad, you really embarrassed me. You really embarrassed me. You were jumping around like a crazy monkey. That was really embarrassing." Now, since I am God's gift to fatherdom and coaching this, and I'm caring and considerate, and I don't have any liabilities as a father or a coach, what do I say to him?
You can say nothing, or you should have taken a shot.
Yeah, exactly. Brian, this is second grade, shoot. Second grade soccer, man. You want to play college soccer, you better take that shot, man. What the heck? I light him up. Because I don't like the fact that he's hinting at the fact that I might have a liability. Interesting thing, when I do that, what do I teach Lucas?
How to answer in anger.
I teach him how to answer in anger. I teach him that anger works. So that's number one. What else do I teach him? Don't ever come to me with feedback, man. Don't criticize me. Don't give me feedback. Don't criticize me because I am right and you are wrong. And by the way, when he's in second grade, he buys that. When he gets into high school, is he buying that? Probably not. Now maybe at the high school, whatever. Some point it switches. He realizes that whole program is bunk. Also, if he's got a feeling or a thought, do not express it. I need you, like a thought of pain, I need you to swallow that. Be a man. Don't come to me and complain. Be a man, swallow it, and swallow your emotions. And don't talk about them because I don't want to hear about them, which is a great program. You know, when he's 20 or 30 and wants to have a relationship with someone who wants to talk about their emotions, his have been hidden. The challenge for me, for us as leaders, particularly with people we love, is can we acknowledge that sometimes I'm a good teacher, sometimes I blow it. If I blow it more than I'm good, I'm not going to be standing here to do it for very long because Patty's going to fire me. But sometimes I'm a good dad, sometimes I'm not a good dad. If I can acknowledge that, and Lucas says to me, "You embarrass me, Dad," what do I say to Lucas?
I'll try better next time.
I can actually own it. That's right.
Yeah,
I don't have to embarrass him.
Yeah, sorry.
I can apologize to him. Now, here's the real thing. So he's in second grade. I apologized to him. Hey, I got really caught up, Lucas. I really wanted to beat that other guy, but hey, man, I get it. You know, this is about having fun, right? Like Lucas, he's like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, Dad, I thought I saw a 4-leaf clover. That's why I stopped. He's like, they care about popsicles after the game, that kind of stuff. The real story about me, why did I hate the fact that he said I was embarrassing him? That hurt bad. I didn't want, so I attacked. The reason it hurt bad is, I told you, I can only talk about this because I'm 54. My mom was an alcoholic. She would show up at a high school basketball game drunk. When you're warming up for a high school basketball game and you look over and you see your mom stumbling on the side of the court, that's embarrassing. That is what embarrassing is. Having your dad who doesn't drink on the sidelines, loving you, supporting you, coaching you every day, every Saturday, that ain't embarrassing. I wanted to tell him everything as I thought about it. I'm like, man, you don't know what embarrassing is till you've had your mom stumbling around the sidelines. But as a second grader, he doesn't get it. That's my work, though. My work is, can I actually own both sides of who we are? My point is this: anytime you get hot under the collar, anytime you're getting reactive, anytime you're getting angry, it's probably because someone has pointed out something on this side, the weakness side, the liability side of who you are, and you don't like it. And the power, the opportunity we have is to actually own it and not get angry about it and acknowledge it. And when we do that, we create safety, and in safety, there is real power. This actually is the model of real humility. If I am truly a person of humility, I don't have to do what about my strengths? I don't have to brag about them. And similarly, if I'm a person of humility, I can own the fact that I have weaknesses and I don't have to deny them. And in fact, Lori, right? Lori's coming to me with a weakness, whether she's 99% right or 1% right, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All that matters is that we can actually talk about it. She feels like I stepped on her toes. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I just got to own it. It's possible I did. The thing that's amazing I am not a theologian, but from a theological perspective, if you think about the humility of Christ, the Son of God, and yet did he come down as the roaring, fire-breathing dragon of God? He came as the what? The lamb, the humble servant, the lamb, like the little lamb. And it just amazes me sometimes. And whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish, whatever you are, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But just the idea that in this religion, someone comes who's the Son of God, and he is the lamb, not the lion, not the dragon. Anyway, it just speaks to the power of true humility. So if we can work hard to keep it at the line, learn to communicate at the line, work hard to help our family members stay above the line, and own this side. And remember, whether Lori's 1% or 99% right, it just doesn't matter.
99.
She's always, well.
That's right. Own it, Lori.
Yeah, the final thing is, I just love this idea of attribution. Attributions are a belief that I have about you. And if the amazing thing about attributions, they're self-fulfilling. They're totally self-fulfilling. I think my kid's a brat. I can turn him into a brat. It's what we do all the time. So I just want you to challenge yourself to think about what are the attributions, the beliefs I have about others, because we have control of that. Yeah.
One suggestion my wife made for me, which has been helpful in terms of communication, because I get that tone of voice that you were talking about earlier, just put it in writing. written messages, and there's no tone of voice. I mean, unless you
Yeah.
wordsmith it incorrectly. But I mean,
Right,
basically,
right.
you're trying to deliver a message without the noise.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a complexity between parents and their children. Because you're always the dad. I forget that I'm the dad. I look at myself as the business person who built the business and trying to share my wisdom, but I'm still the dad. I'm still the guy coaching the 10-year-old. And so trying to putting it in writing eliminates the tone and the bad message.
I love that,
That I'm
because
not
it
trying
forces you to really think.
to articulate
To
my
articulate
feelings
what-
and
exactly.
put it on paper.
Taking time, because that's in a sense that one of the things I had was don't be in reaction mode. A reaction mode is like, I'm firing off right away. Be thoughtful and to engage in dialogue. And some people can do that verbally, some cannot. And so if I'm a fire off person, I think taking the time to write can be very, very powerful. Yeah.
One thing that I always had a contentious relationship with my mom.
It's a recording, Mike.
Okay. I always had a contentious relationship with my mom. And one thing that I was told by actually my pastor was, don't swing at every ball that goes by. And that's when I got it. If I kept trying to, whatever she said, I kept trying to say something back, and it finally dawned on me, it just, don't swing at every ball. Second thing I kind of wanted to think about is the senior generation needs to understand that the junior generation has to fall and stumble a couple of times. But it's finding out or knowing when to catch them before they stumble so that the business doesn't fail.
Don't.
I think that what we do is we end up taking on accountability that doesn't belong to us. If they fail, right, it doesn't mean that we fail. Because often we take on that whole mantra of if they fail, they're not successful, then we failed as a parent, or we failed as a brother or a sister. When you're in business together, because I'm in business also with my brother, we've been working on this project now for going on 6 years, and it finally, maybe I believe this year, will come to fruition. But when I'm watching the stumbles happen, because it's been down that road already, it's hard. But at the same time, you can't take that on and take on that mantra of I failed because they're not successful or as successful as we believe.
So that's when I'm yelling at my son playing soccer, I want him to score, in part because he is a reflection of who?
Yep.
Me. It's exactly what you're talking about. And that's very hard as parents to let go and separate my identity from my kid. There goes my son, he's a good athlete, he's a this, he's a that, and let that go. I love the idea also of don't swing at every pitch, don't swing at every ball, right? And that's the discipline, right? That's the discipline of not, when she's throwing those, and it's hard because people we love, whether it's our spouse or our parent or brother or sister, they know how to throw those balls. So they're going right for a sore spot, right at a sore spot. On the, they know where to aim that thing. It's the discipline. So Lori, so communication is a discipline. It is a discipline. I'm not going to swing at whatever framework works for you. Don't go below the line. Accept my own both sides. Don't swing at every ball. And I think also I just want to, because I think it's so powerful when you think about for those who have kids, here's me as a person. When my child is born, basically my child's identity and frankly his or her life depends on me. I don't change the kid, feed the kid, everything. That kid will die. Everything is it's almost one. But the idea is over time we transition to the point where here's me, here's my kid. My kid wants to be a ballet dancer, not a football player. I got to be cool with that. Why? Because it ain't my life, it's his. And can I separate? And at the same time, communicate respectfully, recognize there's my dad, have my own identity, but there's my dad, he was successful, I'm building my own life too. That is hard. That is the trick, right? That's the trick. The other trick I'll just say is one of the things is, to Gary's point, is can we learn to be peers with our children? Peers with our children. And what I mean by peership is we are equals. That doesn't mean we don't respect the hierarchy. Like if I screw this up royally, Patty's the boss, she will fire me. I get it. Like but I want to have a conversation with her. This is what I think we should do. This is what we shouldn't do. This works, this doesn't work. We're communicating as peers. All the while, I'm not forgetting the fact that if she says, Mike, leave, in 10 minutes you're fired, that's how it works. So that's the trick. Can we build peership while respecting the hierarchy? And when we do that, we build trust. I just, one other component, a word about trust, because I think it's so important. Like, trust is a scary word. If we don't have it, it's a resource in all family firms. It's a resource in all families. We got to have it. We can't make tough decisions without trust. We got to have it. And we got to be able to talk about it. And to say, I don't trust you, is a scary, scary thing to say. But there's different components of trust. It might be real that I don't trust Torn's ability to communicate. I think if I talk about a problem we got in a business, he's going to light me up. He's going to blow me up. We got to be able to talk about that. That's communication trust. The second is competency trust. We got to talk about if Torn is my son, I'm not sure you're out there selling, but I don't think you're a good salesman. We need to talk about how we improve your sales abilities. Competency, skills, where are you good, where are you not? We need to be able to talk about that. That's hard between family members, but we got to be able to do it. The third are motives trust. Like, do I trust that my brother Torn's got my back? I want to be president of this company. I want to take over and run it. Do you have my back? Or are you going to try and undermine me? And sometimes, oftentimes when family members undermine each other, it's not because they're doing deliberately evil. It's just an ego thing. They just don't know. And then the final one is character or integrity. Do I think if I leave my wallet sitting there, is Torn going to steal it? Yeah. Right? And if we don't have integrity trust, we can't be partners. Mm-hmm. I can deal with all the other three forms of mistrust, because that's real in all relationships, but man, I can't be his business partner. And I can't be married to a woman that I don't trust. I don't trust her integrity. Right. So anyway, I'm sure there are others. I know, but I'm just saying different forms of it. Let's be able to talk about it. I think one of page down. One of the source of homework would be for all of you to be thinking about where do I reduce safety? What are things I do that hurt closeness in my relationships with people I love? And is it I scream, I slam doors, I run away, I ignore, who knows? But own it. Gary said all those.
Two things I want to bring up. Thank you, Patty. I love the fact that you broke down trust, because when we think of trust, we lump it all together. We don't look at trust multifaceted, like you broke it down. We think, okay, I trust my husband, I trust my son. Remember the son. I trust my son. But to break it down, that makes you think. And then number two, the communication code of conduct is so important. We had a situation, we hired our son last year, and he is now 20. So he's a college student, he's still young. And I know for me, that's my baby. I'm the mama. He's the youngest, he's the only boy, all those, right. And I found out for me, when he and I were talking, he said, how do you put it? You all don't listen to me anyway. And I said, I listen to you. But what I found after he talked to us, I replayed the tape. He would bring something to the table. And because DJ and I have been in partnership so long, we have a rhythm. So our rhythm was going. And we kind of left our son out of our business rhythm. And he didn't feel like he had a voice. He didn't feel included. So that's so key. And I'm so glad we're talking about that today.
And I think it's a great point. And one of the things, like if I were talking to your son, I'd be like, hey, mom and dad, he's got to be able to come to you guys and say, I don't trust that you actually listen to me.
Yes.
Like, I need you to process it. Here's a challenge, though. Here's a challenge. Like,
You're 20, you don't know
yeah.
Come back when you're 30, I'll listen. Right. So we're good. 15 more years, sorry.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Is it possible, though, that you, Lori, don't always listen to him? Is it possible?
You mean Lisa?
Lisa, sorry, Lisa. I can see it's so bad. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it 99% true? Is it 1% true? My point is, it doesn't matter. All it matters is that he trusts he can raise the issue and talk it through with you. It is challenging when someone who we love say, you don't this, you never that, because rarely do we never. But I'll share with an example. If I say to Torrin, you never shake my hand, Torrin, what's Torrin's job? I'll pose the following. I want you to think about what his job is if we're going to do this stuff. What I don't want Torrin to do is to go back to his calendar and say, oh, I shook your hand on Thursday, October 14th I did it, 2017, and 2015. Look, here's a proof, here's a picture. What do I want Torrin to do? Bingo.
Yeah.
Torrin says to me, Mike, you never shake my hand. I'm not going back and giving him proof. I just give him my hand. That's what we got to do. Mom, you don't listen to me. Let's talk about it. Tell me about what happens. What do you see? And only when Torrin gives me his hand, this is a sort of counterintuitive thing. He may be 1% right, but only when I give Torrin my hand can we actually start having a real conversation about it. I do need him. Eventually, I will acknowledge, eventually, if I'm your mom, you need to be able to say, actually, I do listen. And here are some examples. Torrin, I do shake your hand. I do respect you. Here's some times I've done it. But if I come at him right away with that, he's not going to hear it. It's only by giving him the hand that he can hear it. This code of conduct thing is part of just a tool. Think about what is the thing you do you shut down or hurt communication in your family, and is it pounding your fists on the table, getting pissed off, all those things? And make a commitment. We're going to work on not doing that. NBA is a great game, but there are lines and there are refs, and there are no lines and no refs and no rules. And you put LeBron on the court with Joel Embiid, like there's going to be some real pain that's happening with no rules, right? So great games work with really complex systems because there are lines, there are boundaries, there are refs. Families go into tough conversations about whether we're hiring or firing, spending money, how we're compensating, where we're going to invest, and there's no rules. Let's create a couple rules. Dad, look, you can't, no pounding your fist on the table. You can't do it. And when you're screaming and shouting, Dad, if you're screaming and shouting, we're calling a timeout because the whole thing's shut down. We're throwing a flag. So just own it. We talk about succession, one another. We talked about building trust through good communication. We also build trust in family systems by eliminating ambiguity. So when there is ambiguity, there's an opportunity for conflict. And in family businesses, there are tons of places around ambiguity. What am I getting paid? What's my bonus going to be? How much am I going to own? Am I going to own the business? Who's going to be the boss? Do I have a chance? So it's all of these questions that I, as a successor generation person, have. And I'm not saying that we got to solve all the questions, but we need to be able to talk about them. But these are some typical places of ambiguity that we don't get enough information. There's not unclear. So if I'm working for Lisa, I am her son. When it comes to working in the business, what am I being held accountable for? And if I go to IBM, I understand that really well. The problem is when I'm working in a family firm, that's often mushy. It's just one example. Yeah.
So
So a family that has multiple children in the business, could you just talk on the future leadership role when mom or dad is no longer here? How do you, what are some of the methods by which you strategize that? Because that's maybe the most difficult conversation a family could ever have.
Yeah.
And most men, to be honest with you, most families ignore it and never deal with it and just die. And then it's a mess.
Right.
In family businesses. Probably one of the leading causes of
For sure.
family strife and failure
For
of the
sure.
business.
For
So
sure.
What would,
So
I mean, I don't know if it's,
Yeah, so
I'm jumping the gun here,
but just a couple frameworks.
like to
'cause I
hear
agree.
your
Number
comments.
one, there's two kinds of succession, right? There's succession. Who's going to be the next president after Gary? I'll point at Gary, Brian. I don't care who, like any one of you in this room. Who's going to be the next president? That's on the management side, but also who gets to own it, right? You have how many kids? Three. And the question, if I'm one of those three, I see my brother working in the business. Let's suppose it grows like crazy, and 10 years from now, this thing's worth 10, 20 million bucks, whatever. Let's hope. But is all that going to him, or I decided to be a teacher? What about me? Like, so the ownership succession, who's going to own this business is one, who's going to run it is two. So those are two. I just want to keep that separate because they're different conversations. One principle that we have to talk about is, and families, it seems simple, but what are the rules for who's going to be the next president, the next leader? Is it the person who's most qualified, or does the oldest son get to be the next president because he or she is the oldest son? What are the rules? What are the rules? So let's just clarify those rules, no ambiguity. This is how it's going to work going forward. We say focus on a process, not the person. But we'll talk more about that. But one thing I want to come back to, though, is to Gary's point, is it's really hard for senior gen people to let go, because letting go feels like I'm going to die. We mentioned it last time, right? If the pro football player who's crying as he's retiring, he's been a linebacker killing people for 10 years in the NFL, and all of a sudden he's crying like a baby because he's retiring because he doesn't know who he is if he's not a linebacker. But for all of us, this business thing takes on a portion of our identity. No question about it. Here's the challenge, though. We need to, what we say to family business leaders, you need to think about what are the unique resources, capabilities, the things that are inside of you, relationships you have with suppliers, employees, vendors, etc. All this stuff in there. And figure out how you're going to transition that to the next generation. Because if you don't and you get hit by a bus, that resource pool, that stuff is gone. So it's a strategic responsibility to think about how we take all the stuff inside of you, all that knowledge, experience, and get it to the next generation. That's part of succession. That's why we have to do it. Because you will die. We will all die. It's going to happen. We think it won't, but it will. What are some of those things? So if we're talking Herman, we're talking about Herman. What's Melissa, right? What's a unique thing about that's your dad, right? How long you been running the business? 48 years. So are there some, Melissa, can you identify one or two unique things that are inside of him that if he's gone tomorrow, the business loses?
Boy, that's a deep question.
Yeah, there's a lot of answers on that. I mean, maybe one of the biggest ones is his personality and connection with people. He instantly just soothes people over, even if he can tell you that you can do your job, but you won't have it for 2.5 years, and somehow they're like, okay. And I'm like, I just don't think that I inherited that magic skill you have there. And that's not even to mention all the actual resources and knowledge of he knows how to do all the things.
So, I mean, that's really complex, right? That's why succession is so hard. So you look at a guy like Herman and just pick that one issue of relationship with employees and the culture that exists because of that. And that's sort of mushy, and how do you define it? But that's hard. That's really hard. And the question then of, just as an example, if that is one thing, how do we think about how you, as an individual who's going to lead the business, work to develop relationships with employees and develop yourself as a leader. Now, that's not to say you got to be him, right? You never will. And it's like Tigger. Remember Tigger from Winnie the Pooh when he bounces around his tail? He's like, it's a wonderful thing to be a Tigger because I'm the only one. And there's only one Herman. What's your last name?
Wolford.
Only one Herman Wolfrey in the history of the entire world, in all of history, which is an amazing thing. And he does all these unique things. But my point about succession, and to Gary's point, is begin talking about those things. And actually, it sounds extra deliberate, but it is. Make a list of them. Start really thinking about them. And if you're serious about taking this business another 20, 30 years, how do we do that? Who's going to take that stuff on? How do we do it? There'll never be another Herman. We get that. But we got to start getting that stuff on the table and then transitioned over. And look, Melissa, that's not to say that you are, there's a couple things that, as a next generation person, I am not going to be, this is just Mike. If I were Herman's kid, I'm not going to be as charismatic as Herman is, right? I get it. I'm just not. And you can't make yourself more charismatic. But you can be deliberate, Melissa, about building relationship with each of the employees in a different way, and with the vendors, and with customers. And it'll be a different relationship, won't be the same, but that's just one example. So it's very deliberate about how you identify those things and transition them. Part of the answer is it's a process. It's not, if there are many candidates in a bigger company, and yours there might be one candidate, she's sitting right there. In a bigger company, Gary's, there might be a whole bunch, but we focus on the process of who is going to develop into the right person, not focus on the person. But we also talk about what are the experiences that Melissa needs to have to develop those skills, to show us that she can do it. And whether it's profit and loss experience or et cetera. There are certain skills, business skills that Melissa needs that, she's well educated, but some of those things we can get in education, a lot of them we can't. And so what does she need? And I don't know anything about the business, but maybe she needs to manage a territory in South Philly and go down there and what is it that we need to get into her so that she develops some of those skills and capabilities? And I'm saying, to Gary's point, the responsibility, I keep pointing the two of you, but the responsibility for Melissa's development as a next generation leader belongs to whom? Whose responsibility? Lisa's pointing at Herman. Herman's pointing at Melissa. Let me say this. If this presentation stinks, who's responsible for it? And
Patty does have some, but
me, I'll take 99%, but I'll take 98. I'll go 1, but there's another. Bingo. You do. You do.
whatever you say.
Exactly. A marriage fails, a relationship fails. It's everyone owns some, so it's both. It's both. So it's funny, and we tend to think of it as all Hermans or all Melissas. In reality, it's both. It's both. It takes time. Invest time in it. And look, a board of directors doesn't make sense for every business. I get that, but something about stepping back from the day-to-day, running the day-to-day business, and coming to something like this, or having a couple friends, that create a sense of accountability. I want to transition this over the next 10 or 15 years. And the question for Herman would be what are your and maybe you want to work till you drop dead. Maybe you want to retire and go golfing. Who knows, whatever it is. But let's figure that out and talk about how, and some kind of accountability for Herman. And it's not just Melissa. So it might be your accountant, it might be your buddy, it might be something like this, but some way that you are accountable for this transition, ongoing transition. Someone referred to that succession is the final test of greatness. And Gary's right. A lot of folks hang on super tight. They don't let go because they don't know how. It's fearful, etc. and they take the business on with them. Succession is the final test of greatness. It's a gift. And recognize that it's a chapter in your life, transitioning up, not out. The second, so that's management succession. The second issue is ownership succession. Who is going to own this business? And thinking about the difference between management employees who run the company, and that is different than the ownership of the company. For Lisa and DJ, they're the owners, they're the board, and they're in management. All three in one. But if this thing is going to continue into the next generation, as Gary is experiencing, we are now separating ownership from management. That these are different functions. And understanding that is important because, in theory, it is possible. If I'm one of Lisa and DJ's kids and I'm a teacher, in theory, they could decide that I'm going to own the business. They might even give 1/3 of it to me, despite the fact that their son has been working in it for 25 years. That decision is a decision the two of them are going to have to make. It's their call. I would propose, however, we need to have a conversation around the family, because if I'm their son, I might not feel so great about that. But we got to have a conversation about it. Some families will say, look, you cannot be an owner unless you work in it. And for businesses in which there's like construction, or like, there's certain businesses that makes a lot of sense for. And there are other businesses, the bacon company, big local.
Tasty Cake.
No, they make bacon. Hatfield Meats. Yeah, the bacon and pork and Hatfield Meats. They have 340 shareholders. There's 10 of them who work in the business, and they're in their 6th generation. So there's 10 of them here, 340 of them up there. Can it work? It can. But they treat these people, those shareholders, like they're shareholders of a publicly traded company. The challenge in smaller businesses is that if Melissa's running the business and she's busting her hump running the business and I'm a kindergarten teacher downtown or something, I'm not here and there's, $50,000 of net income at the end of the year. What do I want with that 50 grand?
A bonus.
I want a distribution. And what does she want to do with it? She wants to put it back in the business. And that's the kind of conflict that happens, potentially. I'm a shareholder. Wait a minute, Dad, aren't I your son? Why does she get the business? I thought there's two of us. Isn't this 50-50? Like, don't you love me as much as you love her? So based on that argument, you agree to split it. The challenge is then she's running the business, I'm teaching school, I'm working hard, she's working hard, but at the end of the year, I want a distribution of those profits. And she wants to, because she's here, she wants to put them back in the business. Doesn't always happen, but that's the challenge, right? My only point is, you weren't here the first time, but I said you're a new guy. I did warn everybody. I warn that if you scratch, I'm liable to call on you because I'm so hungry for class So, the questions around ownership, to Gary's point, is ownership, is that an opportunity for folks who demonstrate their interest, or is it an entitlement? I'm Herman's kid. I'm a sibling, you're a sibling, like I'm entitled to the same stuff. But that's a call. And it is the owner, the founder's call. We need to have a conversation. Top leadership, is it going to be about, it's got to be my kid or not? Who can own stock? Can you have non-active? I said that. Like, I don't work in the business. Is that non-active ownership? Can spouses own it? Negative. Don't do that. You want to make sure kids spouse. Because look, you might decide. If I'm Melissa's brother, you might decide that I'm getting 50, she's getting 50, and I'm cool with her running the business, and she wants to reinvest. I trust her. But then I drop dead and I leave the stock to my wife. And now all of a sudden, her partner is my wife. That's not fair to her.
We're not going down there.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Anyway, by the way, does Melissa have to buy it, or are you giving it to her? And that's a conversation to have. I will share with you an opinion, is that I'm a big fan of forcing, asking, discussing, having the Melissas of the world buy it. I don't want to force her into poverty. I don't want to jeopardize the ability of the business to grow. But when I write a check for something, it's a very different mentality than if I'm giving it. Everybody's different, though. There's no right or wrong, and everybody's kids are different. So I'm not saying but that's just, you got to work with people like Gary to help you figure out what's the most tax efficient way to do this. Because last thing we want is some tax. Talk about that. Is you get together with someone like Gary who knows the tax law. Because the last thing you want is to get tangled up with the IRS because we didn't do this right. And you got to write some check to the government that you shouldn't be writing because we haven't done the ownership transition. Couple points, and then I've got some questions. So, some things we want to talk about. How do we ensure, when we talked about whose job is it to be the succession? I'm saying part of it is the senior generation, Herman's. Part of it is Melissa. And the part of it is that Melissa's, I would argue, is that challenging Melissa to think about what is required for her to become an empowered leader. And there's a couple components to it. One is, I would say to Melissa, be really clear on why you want this, to be a great leader here. And what's required, what has Herman done really well, what do we need to add to, what else do I need? And negotiate, motivate, et cetera. Making sure she's got good knowledge and understanding of the business and understands the business model really well. Relationships. What are the relationships that she needs to develop in the company, with bankers, with suppliers, with customers, et cetera, and be deliberate about identifying those. Her resume, we need to see if we're serious about Melissa taking over this business, we need to know that she's been in the trenches, that she understands what it's like. So what we don't want is Melissa trotting in here from MBA school and all of a sudden being made the president of the company, and she's never worked for the place. And that's about resume experiences that she's fought the fight, and all that develops your reputation, right? One of the things that's most important, I would argue, for next generation and this is as parents, our job, is to help instill in our kids trust and confidence in themselves. Because Melissa's ability, I keep using your name, Melissa, so I'm just, okay, you're okay with it? Melissa's ability to be a good leader, to be willing to take the risk, and it's a risk for her. It is a risk to try to step into Herman's shoes. That's a risk. Her willingness to do it is based on her own confidence in herself. If you think about the idea of, we talked about the canoe last time. Remember the canoe? We need to make sure that Melissa knows how to swim. She's going to be willing to take the risk to go out to drive out to Cleveland with Herman and visit the new customer. That's scary. It's a new place, new tusk, et cetera. If she's confident, we need to make sure that she knows how to swim, that she has had the experiences that allow her to take risk. There's some things we talk about. We've mentioned those. This is just a classic. It's just an example, right? The kinds of things that you might think about. So 0 to 18, it's about developing confidence and work ethic, et cetera. 18 to 30, it's about getting education and outside work experience and internships. 25 to 30, it's about getting different kinds of experiences in the business and failing and succeeding and being willing to see her fail without drinking on the business. It's about, and there's no perfect timetable, but 30 to 45, about having bottom line experience, for her having a specific account, like taking on Wawa. Right? I have no idea what the business is, but she takes on the Wawa account or whatever it is. And then making sure that she's had experience managing people. And then is it 55? Who knows? Maybe it's 35. But at some point, she's transitioning into leadership. We'll send the slides out, but it's a list of homework. We don't have to go through it because it's a long list. But this is the kind of, we'll send this out, and Patty's got the slides. Thoughts, feedback, specifically when you think about succession, what feels like the biggest challenge when you think about succession? And whether you're a successor, yeah, Lisa.
I know we've been talking about trust, but the biggest thing is trust when it comes to that succession plan. I'm thinking about ourselves because we have not only a business, we also have a church. So, yeah. So you think, I know I'm sitting here thinking, who do I trust, with our business and then doing the work of the Lord? Should we both go at the same time? What happens to the church? So the biggest thing for me is trust. And then, again, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that you broke the trust issue down, it's not the integrity. It's the confidence.
That you have in potential successor, or developing in the potential successor confidence that they can do the work? What is it of those two?
The confidence in the potential successor.
So the question then is, the challenge for you guys as you think about successor is, can you become deliberate about, one, what is it that the two of you are doing, both on the business side and on the church side? And the list is long. And how do you begin? The same would be true of any one of you who are responsible for founding businesses. I'll point to Herman. Brian, you have kids working for you?
No, 3 brothers.
3 brothers. Lisa?
I'm the second gen.
You're the second gen. Do you own the business now?
No,
Not yet.
I decided to be a professor instead.
You said. So you're the one out there teaching while Melissa's building the business, huh?
Yeah.
There you go. But the real point is, that list is long. And I'm saying go from intuitive, you intuitively know all the stuff you're going, to intentional. Go from intuitive to intentional, identify those key things, and then, it feels, I get that it can feel clunky, but it's the only way it's going to happen. Some folks get lucky, but I can't imagine the list of things. Like, I'm just pointing at Herman, you guys got 2 unique businesses. And the challenge for folks, whether it's just a business or a church, but there's so much, like, our DNA is in the thing, right? That it's so personal. So that's hard, yeah.
Mike, I think what DJ said is the key to a lot of this, is having a communication system where you've blocked out the time on a regular basis so that there's consistency, and obviously the commitment will follow. So not having schedule to deal with all these issues and think through, what are all the skills that we have to replicate, or do we hire someone? If our family doesn't have those skills and they're necessary, who does in the company, and how do we reward them with stock rights and not ownership but phantom ownership? All that stuff takes time and communication, and unless you have a regular scheduled meeting to deal with it, it doesn't get done. So I would say my biggest takeaway from this is you have to block out the time on a regular basis, and everybody has to commit to that, and and then hopefully you can give us an outline to talk through these meetings, Mike. But I think it starts with having it set aside the time on a regular basis to think about all these issues, and then collectively make some of these decisions. Some of these decisions can't be made collectively. The senior people have to make it relative to their wealth distribution strategy. But as far as the business is concerned, I think the key is, a regular communication where you put some of these things on the table and think through it together.
And if you think about, to that point, Gary, if you think about, you've got a small business, you don't have to have a bunch of meetings. That's the beauty of it, because people know each other. That's intuitive. Like, we're just banging, but everyone knows what's going on. But as it grows, with more complexity comes the opportunity for more ambiguity. And then we have to, and it is an icky word, I get it, but you got to add some structure. Because if we don't do this stuff, we're not going to build trust. If I'm Melissa, and every time I want to talk about my succession plan, Herman's too busy, there's another thing that eventually my trust that this thing's going to happen begins to erode. In fact, we did some research on family businesses over a 3-year period, and we found that for people between the ages of 28 and 40, there was this sudden decline in trust. Sudden decline in trust. And it's like, the younger folks were trusting of where this thing was going, the older folks were trusting where it's going, but it was this middle age group. And what we found out is that they didn't trust, because they didn't do this, they didn't trust the motives of the senior generation. It was a motives trust, and it was about, do you really want me to take this business over? Because we're not having any of this stuff. We're not. So companies, as it gets more complex, whether you're having daily huddles, stand-up 5-minute meetings, I see a lot of companies do that. Stand up, don't sit down, stand up 5 minutes, what's going on, boom, 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 boom. Weekly tactical, hey, what are the big issues, da-da-da-da-da. Monthly, hey, well, these are goals for next month. And but to Gary's point, this succession thing is complicated, and it is a really important. I get it's not urgent, but it's very, very important. And those kinds of things, those strategy conversations, don't have to happen every day, every week, every month, but they ought to happen. I don't care whether it's quarterly or every 4 or 5 months, but to DJ's point, man, we got to commit. We're going to have regular communicate. It's going to be consistent. We're going to talk about these issues. If I'm Melissa, I know I can sit down and talk with my dad about, these are the things I'm working on. These are the things I think you need to start turning over to me. We're having a communication.
Yeah, so briefly, at the beginning, the thing that you had up, Mike, that talked about toolbox, is something that I teach on a regular. So everybody has a toolbox, all right? Everybody, and inside of that toolbox are specific skills and things that may or may not relate necessarily to the business, but they have importance, they have relevancy in terms of who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of times is that as business owners and leaders, we don't often tap into the people to find out what tools they have in their toolbox. And as a result of not tapping into that, we miss opportunities for growth. We miss opportunities to develop and develop ourselves. Because guess what? As we develop them, they're developing us at the same time. But we take this leadership mentality like I'm the one, I got all the answers. We don't always have all the answers. So taking advantage of the people that find out what's in their toolbox and using that will help the business be effective. And it also helps in terms of defining what your succession plan is.
I totally agree. And if you think about what allows me to look around this, if I'm the president, look around the room and see all the different skills, is humility. And I think you're right, DJ, and a lot of folks struggle with, if you got a better idea than me, or you're growing this, it's a threat to me. Yep. But in reality, if I'm as a leader, I can bring profound humility. I can recognize that you got great ideas and I may not. My job isn't to have all the answers, all the ideas. I gotta have the humility that says I got some strengths, some weaknesses, and out there's a whole bunch more.
Mike, I think the part of this process is, going back to the beginning and looking at the skills and strengths and weaknesses of each individual in the company. If I'm going to ask you to manage things, and you're a quick start. I can ask you all day long. You're never going to be good at it. So I think one of the things that we figured out early on was help everybody develop their strengths by backfilling, in partnership or teams or support with someone who doesn't have those those skills that are required, so that you're never asking someone to do something that's unnatural and they're incapable of really doing successfully.
Here's the challenge, though, Gary. What do you do when your son or your partner's son or daughter wants to be here, but you know they don't have the skills to do it?
Partner them with someone who has those skills that they can delegate that piece of the job to. And if it's follow through, there's a test, I forget the name of the test, but it tells the answer, what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And my partner,
Yeah.
my partner and I discovered by accident that we had perfectly complementary strengths and weaknesses. So God had a plan for us, and so he never wanted to deal with financial stuff or any of that stuff. He turned out he wanted. But he was an expert in managing people, recruiting, training, managing the managers, advanced casework. He has this specialized gift that God gave him, and so that's what he worked on. And I worked on the future and the ideas and our strategies and the financials, and we supported each other with other people to do this stuff, so that we could accomplish whatever area we were working in. But we started to try and offload some of these things to the next generation and realized they don't have our skills.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own skills. So we had to figure out what they are and then provide support around them to make them competent at whatever we're asking them to do. And so I think that's part of this regular communication, going back to square one and saying, all right, what is everybody's strengths and weaknesses? And let's make sure we're not asking someone to do something that they cannot do. And then we did it throughout the organization, and it really, at the management levels, and it really helped because when you partner the right people together, you have a superstar, or you get the results that you're looking for. But when you ask someone to do something, like my attitude on management, if I told you once, that should be enough. Didn't you hear what I said? And I'd say, Joe, we went over that like 3 or 4 months ago. He says, yeah, and you got to keep going. So again, that's management, repeating and coaching and adjusting. And some people aren't set up to do that. Some people are great at it, coaching and managing others. So again, I think it's critical for a business to be successful long term. You got to figure that all out and then build around that. So.
And the question for family firms is, are you willing to go outside? So is Melissa willing to go outside and bring in others that can complement her skill set? It may not be feasible just for cash flow or whatever. We can't add more headcount, I get it. But some families won't do that. And by doing that, they kind of limit the wingspan of the business to their own talent within the family. If you're willing to do what Gary said, I'm Gary's son, I've got X talent, but I don't have Y. I gotta be able to hear that. So we're gonna go out and hire that and bring that in, and then our business can continue to grow. We can expand the wingspan so that we can grow. But I know a lot of families, some big ones you would even recognize, where they're not willing to do that. Only family can have this job. Only family can have that job. And my point to them is, that's fine, but you are limiting the growth of the firm. Their call. That's a good wrap at 10:00.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks again, Mike. Really give a nice hand to Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Danny Apex Productions.